You and your best players no one's ever heard of, rants. Had enough.
Introduction. That's so nice.
Hello, welcome to Let's War Game. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to Stream Streak Day 224 or 5. I don't remember this. Lots. I've stopped naming it on the show because I feel like it's like a book that, you know, someone's like, do you want to get into this book? And there's 37 of them. You're like, no, I'm not starting on book 1. I'm not that I don't think anyone has ever listened 1 to 238, or whatever it is, but thanks for being here. Anyway, I've got some incredible guests.
It's because of your wide and varied catalog. Like, no one could possibly appreciate the breadth of your interests.
Thank you. I think it's yes. Let's go for yes, shall we? Right, so we've got some amazing guests and amazing people in the chat. We've got Val, Dayton, and Tom on the show. I'm going to introduce those three in a moment. There's Dayton. He's doing some hobbies, painting up Moloch. I'll talk to him in a moment. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us live. I see Angle, Inez Wilson, Born Again Manchild, Ziggy, Art Award, 40k Down Under, Wolf.
Just call him Diffie, it's probably easier.
It might not be just Diff. It could be
just assume it's Diffie, it's fine.
But
I'm sure that's Adam. Isn't that usually Adam?
I think it's Adam. Yeah. Adam.
Call him Diffie. It's fine.
Sexy Adam. Today's show, just before we get started, so you guys can know, we're going to be talking
about the Stompa.
Yeah, we're talking about the Stompa. That's what we're talking about. What happened to the Stompa?
We did it.
Can you tell me?
We did it. What happened to the Stompa?
Yeah.
Custom Stompa, ladies and gentlemen. Custom Stompa. So this is a precursor to the Stompa. Tom Layton, don't give me looks, okay?
Well,
down
I'm
to 800
looking at the
points.
screen. I'm still reading the chat.
Points.
Yeah, 800 points, and also some upgrades. It's got an eye laser that does some damage. It's got a stronger claw. Custom Stompa.
The same.
Is the custom Stompa the one with the cock?
Yeah, it's got the dick cannon. Dick cannon stays the same. It's got that BDE, guys. 50 points for that gets you to 850. The old custom Stompa, fully tricked out, was 1115 points wise, and now it's 850. So that is a tidy cost savings, ladies and gentlemen. What it also means to me is that the base Stompa will probably have to be somewhere in the 700 range, maybe even sub 700 when we see that codex. So buckle up, folks. The age of the Stompa is finally coming.
This guy's doing a great job of selling snake oil, by the way. I love it.
Tom Layton, have you read the Stompa rules?
I have read the Stompa rules. Have you read the Weird Boy rules to go alongside it? It's great, isn't it? You can re-roll all the hits. And
all the hits. Reroll all the hits. Okay,
great.
Custom Stompa before this was already outputting crazy damage. Like it was actually nuts when you had Evil Sons and you had it on Daka. It did hilarious amounts of damage. Now one of its guns is way better. The lifted dropper went from D6 if it hits, it's 1 mortal wound. Fun times. To 3D3, beat the target's toughness -4 crazy D3 plus 3 damage. So pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the Stompers, which I also feel means that we might be getting orcs soon, which is the other exciting factor. But
no, bro, I'm calling this. I'm feeling it. January. I feel it.
Okay. Well, not to blow the lead, I was actually going to talk Stomper at the end, but no. The thing that we are going to talk about today, when we get around to it, is I'm going to talk to everyone about the incredible, in my opinion, and I can't go on enough about how impressed I was by it, incredible Goonhammer article, specifically discussing the first turn. There's like a lot of statistical analysis in there, and again, before we even start talking about it, I want everyone to go and read it. It's a lot to read, but it's super
See you in 2 hours.
Yeah, but it's super worthwhile. It's really informative. It's incredibly well crafted and put together. I can't do anything but applaud. And also, how good is content when other people are making content about your content? Again, read all their stuff first. This is more a conversation about what's in the article, and we will be talking about that. That's going to be really important. But before we do that, check out the show. It's the Canadian show. I got 2 former Canadian ETC teammates on the show, Val and Tom.
Yay.
Yeah, that's right. And then Dayton, who represents, I think, all of you got Val, who represents kind of the bourgeoisie, Canada, yacht clubs.
The old money.
Money. And then you got Dayton bringing up the power for working, which is why you can only see his hands. You know, he's all graft.
He's so working class. Dayton, what do you got underneath your painting mat? Yeah, there it is.
Oh my. Oh wow. Oh yes, that's hot.
What is it?
It's
It's all my reading material I've done in 2 weeks about engine fundamentals and heavy duty mechanics. So I am in school right now. So this is also my classroom.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, there's nothing to congratulate about. I'm almost 40 years old and I'm back in school. So
I think there should never be a point where we stop learning. That's the point, right?
there's a point where I stop caring, though.
Good point. Dayton, how you been?
Good. Yeah, really good. I mean, you invited me on for a Sunday hobby time, and then you drop a bomb on me about first turn mechanics that I've done no research for. So no, it's good.
Oh, shit.
it's just because I was up with JVP really early and nattering on to him about stuff. So I guess he felt the need to talk about crunchy items.
Well, I read it last night, and I was like, "This is brilliant!" And I loved it. So I wanted to chat about it today, and it just all seemed to coalesce. That's the thing about doing a show every day for 200 and whatever fucking many days. It just kind of goes out the window a little bit. But thankfully, I've got a incredibly adaptive team. Tom, how are you?
Fine. I was up late night writing an essay on Twitter. I wake up and Innes and fucking Liam have both sent me their own essays, and I'm like, fuck my ass now. I'm going to have to respond to these. So I'm just like...
Twitter isn't Daka, right?
I mean, it's just more of a case of I write it out on a writer document, and then you just copy and paste 280 character sections into tweets and then just send them down a thread. I'm like, oh no. Whatever.
Which is good because it's on the subject we're going to be talking about today. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah. Val, how are you? You well?
Oh man, I'm top of the pops. It's great, man. Off the charts. I'm so excited about life that I showed up on Sunday. Look at that.
Oh, perfect.
I did order a Tomb Sentinel though for Forge World.
You what?
Let me Google what that is.
The Tomb Sentinel. It's the Necron Centipede.
Is it good?
Its stats look pretty good, and it's only 90 points.
Oh, it's the big scarab thing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really nice looking model, that.
I've always wanted one. The rules have always been shit, and from what I've been told, aka shown via photo through the internet because leaks are a thing, it looks pretty good.
We've all seen all. Someone sent me today both the Death Watch and the Space Wolf book.
Oh, yeah.
Well done, Games Workshop. You really defeated that piracy at all points. Again, I was sent it. I never requested it. You can't stop WhatsApp. That's all I'm going to say. I deleted it immediately because obviously I respect everyone. All right. I also did some hobby last night. I was on the phone to another Canadian, Mr. Fantastic Guy. I think you'll all notice as well, touch wood, that the internet is smashing today, and I'd like to do a special throw it out there to Chris Seaton or Serbator in the chat, who did some engineering on our internet yesterday. Not sure what it is.
Wait, this is a home fix? How can you fix your own internet? How's that even possible?
Well, so when we did back into Stream Street Day 50 or whenever it was, when we did the drive for better internet, the router thing. Yeah. So we have a load sharing router, and it can share up to 4 different loads of internet and coalesce it into one mega internet.
You like a big load. you like load so much that you need to combine 4 of them into one larger load.
It's really the Bukkake of servers.
You're putting 4 loads in one place.
I also need someone to come and manipulate my loads quite often, so that's. Anyway.
So it's sort of a dynamic thing. So you have more than one provider, and it sort of is always optimizing your bandwidth type thing.
Yeah, but yes, it seemed like one of them was doing something weird, and Chris fixed it. And then we plugged a third one in, so we're now up to 3 of the 4 max loads.
So you're crossing the streams.
Yeah. So hopefully we should have the hot fire internet. So I've jinxed it now, but we'll see. Seems okay so far. And I also shook it a bit and turned it on and off. Right, today, let's talk this thing because I'm excited. So the article, again, you can get the link in the chat, which is incredible. That comes from the Goonhammer guys. I feel like it's a direct attack against the last MetaWatch article. There was some There was a loaded question I felt posed in the Meat Watch article. No, sorry, yes, where specifically it was, do you think the first turn problem is a problem? And obviously we talked about this a lot in 8th edition. Val, maybe you would have more information than anyone about like the situation about the first turn in 8th ed, or not?
So actually, this is like something that I find really fascinating about the grimy work that that Goonhammer is doing, is that they are actually taking advantage of stuff that maybe went a little untapped in 8th. I think the ITC Battles app, which is where a lot of the first turn data comes from, was kind of nascent still. Like it certainly hadn't been widely adopted at tournaments when it should have been. Probably I'd say the first time it really came out on the scene was don't trigger warning, Rob, but the Atlanta Open, the Pro Tabletop Series.
Doesn't trigger me.
You were upset about it. But anyway.
I was never into competitive, whoever they screwed over. So...
Okay. Anyway, they used it extensively there, and I think it's sort of picked up some steam. So essentially, they're able to get really finite detail about like the turn order, when people are scoring, who's going first, all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious to know how much they vet the data, but I think they're getting so many games that even if there is some room for, some margin of error within it, it's aggregating to something that's representative of what's actually happening. So it's super awesome. Outside of that, of course, the DUP BCP merging of minds has resulted in a similar function being added to Best Coast pairings, because Down Under pairings also had sort of an ITC Battles app type tech to it. So they're using a data set that we really didn't have in 8th, and it's just adding that extra layer of understanding how the game works. So we actually don't know like what kind of a first turn advantage 8th had. I've seen it said from the ITC Battle stuff that it was around 54% at the end for ITC missions.
Okay, can I kick this off with like a thing that they put at the end of the article, but I actually really think is an important like prefix to the article, in the why does it matter, like, and also how important it is, because you have the competitive environment, which all of us are involved with in some way. And then you have like your casual gamers, and how important is it that the stuff that you might be conversing about when it comes to competitive gaming, does it translate over into like your more casual gamers who are just having fun and just moving some stuff around? The thing that I'd like to put a pin in, relate to my own personal life this week, is I watched the Queen's Gambit, as I told you guys earlier before. Yeah, and one of the
kind of adjacent, Rob.
Yeah, it's getting adjacent, I agree. But the important point was they discussed what it was like playing White. White always gets to go first. Obviously, kind of some sort of holdover, a cultural over there, naturally. White gets to go first when you're playing chess, and therefore is seen potentially as having some kind of advantage. And then it's discussed in this film, and I've watched actually quite a lot of competitive chess on YouTube. Like, I quite like speed chess. I think it's quite fun to watch. But it was fascinating having it like explained from like the expert level down to a layman in the show, and for me to understand a little bit better. And then in this situation, I feel it's the same. Whereas in like, if I said to you, "Would you like to play a game of chess?" You'd be like, "Well, is there any advantage between white and black?" You'd be like, "At our level, no." Like once you get to a ridiculous level, yes. However, if I was saying, "Do you want to play 40k?" but if you roll off to go first, and this isn't the stats, like, and you get to go first, there's like a 67% chance you're going to win. You'd be like, wow, that seems a little like out of whack. So really, like, this drive to try and understand what parity level, like going for, like there being some sort of parity between going first and second, is an important one, because it really doesn't discuss. Well, it shouldn't be a discussion about can you just outskill it, which we'll get to later. It should be like, does the competitive data set help to translate the game to a more casual gamer? Can you and me play a more casual game, and going first doesn't matter? Does that make sense? Am I making sense with my point?
That's fine, Matt. Yeah, you're making total sense with the point. It's just not something I disagree with, so we might get a boring conversation.
Oh no!
What do you disagree with in that?
Nothing. That's what I don't. That's my point.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I do actually wonder if once like the veil is revealed on the fact that, oh shit, if I go first, I have a 10% better chance of winning consistently in all of the data we got. I think like the biggest insight to me from this entire very, very long article is actually in the portion about why that's happening, and they do a bit of like analysis around what advantage exactly going first gives you. And I see a lot of like the responses from, like the community leader, Mr. Brandt. He responds a lot about like people complain about Alpha Strike, whereas it's not really about that. It's more about the first mover advantage, the fact that you can not only get on objectives first, but you also have the opportunity to disrupt your opponent's objectives, something I hadn't really considered. And also just talking about how it's such a big deal if you don't score, 10 or 15 points. Because you only have so many turns to actually make up that deficit. So if in the first turn you get blanked going second, you have a very, very small chance of catching up. And so just that knowledge alone, I think, could potentially shift how people approach the game. And I think that's maybe not necessarily widely known. So like just how important that is. Right now, I think people are losing at the list building phase. And
so, oh, sorry, you finish, Mark, because I'm about to say that. Spot on. I love that. So is it an issue with how people are approaching the game, or is it an issue with the game itself?
Which is someone in the chat is like, I don't know how you compare it to chess. That's the conversation I'm trying to. There's seen to be some sort of parity in chess where it doesn't, like, unless you are at a grandmaster level, the natural going first advantage with white isn't a big deal. Like, it doesn't relate to you and me as plebs playing a game of chess at the park.
Okay, how do you know I'm 1100 elo now? Thank you very much.
Exactly. Whereas, is there a structural issue in the game where going first has a natural advantage in 40k? Is the conversation, right? And that's where I'm trying to, because that makes the game potentially more valid or less valid. In some ways. I mean, it still makes it valid. It just comes down to a single dice roll. That makes it more of a deal.
Yeah, and I think that was an issue I had specifically in 8th edition. Specifically when I went to that Blood and Glory in 2019, I got seized on every single game of day one. And I was like, why does one dice roll matter so much competitively?
Yeah.
Right. And to be fair, that was also an issue of my list. I brought Wind Riders. That was bad. So it was one of those things. But at the same time, at what point is it an issue where people are having to prep so much for this eventuality, right? Because a lot of people are just playing, like, we have to remember that it's not just like the top like 10% or whatever. You've got the rest of the people there as well. And at what point is it just not fun for those people if they're having to like play around this one dice roll so much?
Well, so because there's points on that as well, which is also excellent. It's such a well done article. Like, I can't applaud it enough. Whether or not you agree or disagree with the findings, the structure that they've taken through the conversation is phenomenal, and I love it. Like, inherently love it. And I'm going to talk about it all day about how fucking much I love it. So Val, you were bringing up like their first point, right? Which was so basically, I'll read out some of the stats. That again, go look at the article specifically. So if the winner went first. Oh no, wait, hold on. So it's a 57% chance that you're going to win, roughly, if you go first. But like that's already a bit of a broad stroke conversation. So, like, there's some other information that they brought up which I thought was really good. Which was if the winner went first, how many victory points are they going to get? So specifically on the primary. So the primary victory points versus the loser's victory points, and then if the winner went second. So if you went second but you still won, or you went first but you still won. If you went first and you won, you generally got on average 10.3 victory points. However, if you went second and won the game, you got 8.9. However, if you won by going second and your opponent obviously went first, they got an average of 8.2 on the primary as well. So like you always do pretty well on the primary, basically, if you go first, compared to if the opponent, but you still lose. So you lose big, and then you, or you lose more, is another way of putting it. And then if you go first and win, you win more as well. So those are the two kind of places. So going first always means you generally rack in more points. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Going second is like if you're winning going second, it's always a game. Whereas if you're winning going first, often it's a blowout. I think is kind of the takeaway.
Yeah.
With this data, yes.
With this data.
One of the things I'm very specific about is I don't really value winning big. It's also about consistency, though, right? So let's say London GT, for example, right? Last year, I always say like I played 5 games and I was ahead in 4 rounds, but I won 4 games because I wasn't fussed about necessarily winning big. I more value like how likely I am to get those 1 or 2 points more than my opponent rather than just smashing.
Mm-hmm.
So a second turn provides you with an opportunity to.
It's a very win-loss mentality, Tom.
Yeah, I know.
Really
yeah.
coming
Do you
around.
want to explain it out a bit more, Tom?
So, for example, it's better to win 2 games, 39 points to 38, than it is to win 1 game, 90 points to 0, and lose 1 game, like 50 points to 49.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yep.
What's this? Dayton talking in the chat. The list that I brought to a tournament in a GT did not promote the player taking first turn and advancing on me because I had Mortarion. And by having Mortarion, he creates a bubble on that center where if you rush, you're going to lose everything that you have because I had warp time too. So I had that real big reach. So I didn't get to see that statistic as much in my games. And in fact, the ones where I went second were the ones that I won. And the 2 that I lost were just a 2 shooty list on first turn, taking me off.
So would you say that you felt like you already knew a lot of the way that this conversation goes, and therefore you prepped like already?
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing, though, right? Like, if you design a list to go second, you're not going to lose by not going second. If you design a list to go first, you may lose by not going first.
Yes. So yeah, which is
yeah.
I think that which I think has been the crux of the pushback. So this is the third riposte in this conversation. The first being here's the stats for going first for ninth. The second being the MetaWatch article, in that you should always prepare to go second, and therefore you should. And then the riposte being later on in this article, in retort in this ongoing conversation, and it should only be discussed as a conversation, not an argument.
It's interesting. Well,
it's fascinating stuff. Like is. That actually, if you look, no matter what, if you go first, you generally rack up more points. Like, be it primaries or secondaries, there's like a distinctive advantage. Now, someone in the chat, go on, Val. You got something.
I was just gonna say the other great thing that they kind of analyzed, if you will, is again further to that point. Why is it that they're scoring so much point? And they look. It can actually again because of the Battles app. They're able to look at mission-specific results, and I don't know if I'm jumping the lead again here, but they're able to talk about how really what they think is probably going on is that home objective advantage too, because you're so much more able to protect home field objectives rather than sort of midfield objectives. That if in missions where there are a lot of in your deployment zone or close to your deployment zone objectives, those are the ones where you have a particular advantage going first, and that's actually most of them. There's only one mission in the GT pack, I think, if I remember from the article, that has only one objective within the deployment zone. So that's super fascinating to me as well, because like that immediately says to me like your army build needs to be able to take people off of their home field objectives somehow. And also that says to me that your army build should be able to have guys who can keep normally we're just putting lame units to hold the backfield, like your 10 guardsmen or a group of boys or some grots or whatever, whereas really you need to be building so that whatever's actually back there is durable enough that if you go second, that it's not getting blown up before you have a chance to score it.
Yeah, I think the fact that they added in like structurally what the issues are as well, which is I think that was really well done, and you should go and have that read that through, because I think I just wanted to talk about maybe like the tactics surrounding some of this information, but it is because the information generated points you with a way to play or a way to stop you losing or help you not lose as much, which I think is important as well. Because one of the things that they also racked out was the primary victory points. So that was the first conversation about the primaries, the secondary victory points. Oh no, wait, no, that's not right. We're not there yet. Sorry.
I don't even know if they talk about secondary at all. I think the assumption is secondary is fully up for grabs.
No, I think they did somewhere.
Press Control F.
No, they didn't. No. Sorry, you're right. They didn't. I'm sorry.
It's all about primary, which is pretty interesting too. Just how ineffectual. I think the assumption is that, and maybe that's another way you can improve the game too, is by making secondaries less of a guarantee. I think the idea here is that primary is so heavily weighted that it's also skewing the game in that sense, and that if perhaps there's more weight to secondary, then you would have more variability, and going first wouldn't be such an advantage.
Again, the advantage that we're talking about is like it's about 7 to 10%. Like it's a degree. Now, the thing that I've found also, I'm going to say this a lot. It was all interesting. Another great point, was how that changed over time based on player level. So it's been a really interesting journey with me with stats in wargaming. Like this is a personal journey, obviously, and people who've listened to the show a lot will know. Because obviously, when we did all the Age of Sigmar stats at the first, there was so much pushback all the time, and you'd have some like dickhead top player touted out to give some like dissenting opinion, because they get one free book a year, and so like it's been a challenge to just really like converse about the validity of the stats. One of the things that I found interesting here was where they talked about how that changed over time. So what you would end up with is you would have the first turn advantage is less significant in early rounds of a tournament. And again, they do say that there's some issues here. Because really, if you're a good player versus a bad player, going second, you should be able to try and close that gap in there being a disadvantage. However, once you get into the top tier, which is where the chess comparison comes in, in that scenario, normally first turn becomes more of an advantage again because you're both at an equal skill level, and now you can't close that gap again. And I find that fascinating. I think that's super. What do you think? Because that kind of really blows like some hot coals on. Well, not hot coals. That's not a sentence. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What do you think? Tom, what are your thoughts? Sorry.
So, isn't that sample size of Game 5's 21 games?
Potentially, yeah.
Also,
but I'm not saying it's factual. I'm not saying it's
no, it's
facts.
fine. I know. I get that as a talking point, and that's absolutely fine. What I'm just trying to say really is that I think that as we get more experience with the game and we get more used to it, I feel like that's going to temper out a little bit more. Remember, I was back in October last year saying, "Oh, we should just let Marines be for a bit," and then they kind of because I still think there are some counters that we never saw for Marines, specifically last year. Never ever saw them.
But it's a different game.
And then, my point is that I
post LVO Marines. I think you're right, but not pre LVO Marines.
I'll send you some of the things I had planned, but I never wanted to buy because there was a new edition and those armies were expensive.
Okay.
Because I think there were some things, but when we got to that point where we got to post LVO, I think that after they changed from there, I think that was fine because now you've had that time to let it fester, and then you've gone, okay, it's still an issue. Therefore, it's not something that's just temporary as people get used to it. It's something we actually need to intervene and fix. And I feel like that's the case for 9th edition specifically, and that's going to last even longer, specifically because of COVID, and we're not actually really out there playing many events, really. So I feel like a lot of these stats are going to temper out as books get released and as people get used to the new edition. Because remember, it's quite a lot of very big changes. Board size we haven't even really talked about, for example.
Yeah.
So as we get more used to those kind of fundamental mechanics and people start to play around those, I feel like you might end up with these stats tapering out. If they don't, then I would support GW intervening. But for now, I don't think it's a massive issue. And also remember, Val, you said a minute ago, you thought it was 54% win rate in 8th edition with ITC. Mm-hmm. So that's a gap of 8%, right? Between first and second turn. At what point is this win rate acceptable?
Exactly. That's a very reasonable thing to say. And I don't know. It's slightly over 50 in chess. What is it? It's like I
can get it for you. I can get it for you. 1 second. Let's mute Mike while I type.
But I think that's a super valid point. I think really when you're looking at these aggregates, it's especially if you're looking at when this knowledge, the specific knowledge matters is at the higher ups. If both players have no idea that there's an advantage going first, you can't take advantage of that. You can't take advantage of the advantage.
Unless it's a structural advantage.
Conversely, yes and no. Like if you don't know that, hey, I can really, if I get 15 points this turn and make sure that my opponent gets 0 or 5, I have like a crazy % chance of winning this game. If you don't know that, maybe you don't gun to take him off the objectives. Maybe you don't push out to make sure that you get the 15 or whatever. So like you could just randomly win too. Go ahead.
Val, I've got the stats for the white side on chess. According to this, which is like literally just the first thing that pops up on Google, it's 55% over nearly 1 million games.
55?
55, apparently.
That's impressive. That's what?
Yeah, brother. I didn't think it'd be that high. I have to double check that.
That's
if someone else in the
curious.
chat could have a proper look and find some better data for that,
Oh,
that'd
wait,
be great.
did Rob bring up a good analogy? What a surprise!
So it's a
Yeah.
10% gap.
Does that check out to you, Rob?
I think the conversation about that specific one, because chess has I don't know if anyone's been paying attention, but chess has exploded recently, past like 10 years or so. Specifically because there's a lot of like online Twitch chess streams that are really interesting to watch, super fun. But also importantly, like I think a lot of like the mythos around it has been kind of like debunked a little bit, and people are like learning really quickly and playing what is a fascinating and engaging game. The point is those numbers, like that million games, I imagine will be tracked from some sort of online source or something like that. And so, probably what we've got, very much like what we have with the ITC Battles app information and stats, is we have a lot of aggregate games from random people. Yeah. In some cases. Like, all my games, I imagine, have been tracked on the ITC Battles app. Like, because I've been using it religiously since Ninth came out, and it's fucking cool as. Big fan. So, like, ultimately... you're going to get data sets. You're going to get like aberrant data in from like, all this stuff just points to some information is what I'm trying to say. And it's fun to talk about because it's fascinating, because then you can be like, okay, cool. Like, when the game very first came out, me, Nick and Tom did a show about like, okay, you're going to want to get 45 primary points. Like, you don't want to get 45 primary points so that give up all 45 secondary points, but ideally you want 90, you want all of them, right? So if you can build a list that designs to get 45, then you're working towards a list that also hopefully gets the other 45 as well. So it's already something you're planning for, and now it's like everyone's now planning for it. How do you go about it? It's just interesting. I don't know. I like it.
And maybe the most basic way to, and I think maybe the most basic way to change it or fix it is to maybe you add a fourth, secondary. Or do we already have four? No, yeah, maybe you add a fourth secondary, or maybe you devalue primary a little bit. Like,
see, no, I push back on that super hard, because I actually think one of the things that makes 9th edition very engaging for me personally, and I find secondaries a tad disengaging, is because secondaries that you're just playing your army anyway and you're just achieving points feels a bit weird, whereas primary, which I know Tom pushed back that you're still just playing the game by jumping on the objectives anyway, but primary,
you're just doing one thing,
but the primary now in 40k, very much like the primary in Age of Sigmar, it's the only one in Age of Sigmar, has always forced you to engage on the tabletop. I must go to there, you must also come to here. We both know that going into the game, so how do we play around that mechanic?
So I need to make a point here, because the difference between Age of Sigmar and Age of 40k, is that in 40k you can go all in. In 40k you can go all in. Age of Sigmar you can't because of the double turn.
Which again,
so you just take your entire thing and just whack it in the center and do your one thing. Whereas in Age of Sigmar you have to be a little bit more like cagey and think about it a bit more, rather than just my army go who.
You're right. It is a smarter game, but.
Yes. I agree. I don't disagree with you.
However, the point is that it's still because for instance, if you build a list that's designed just to whack in the middle in 40k, I know that that's what you're planning, maybe, or like I have to prepare that you're going to do that. I think it's a great game. There's no criticism from me. I love this article, and I just wanted to talk about it. I think it's fascinating. I really got nothing else to say, I don't think. I'm now just gushing over a great game, a great article written about a great game. This is all I've got.
Yeah, I think that just comes back to the ability to, also, with regards to, if the game is all about primary, then it comes down to list build and construction and your ability to both, mitigate first versus second turn. One of the really cool stats where they sort of dig deep here is, if I can get back up to it, where are you? Anyway, just talking about factions and whether they win, their win percentage going first and their win percentage going second. And in these scenarios, there's 5 or 6 factions right now that are above 50%, both first and second. And this is using the ITC Battles data. And when you look at the bottom of the list, you have stuff like Guard, which why can't I find it? Come on, where are you?
It's okay, I've got you on this one. So I had an actual conversation on Twitter about Guard.
There it is, got it. Go ahead.
So Guard already have a 43% win rate, but then that's massively different between first and second turn, right? And I feel like a lot of the Guard armies currently are still being built like they were in 8th edition, 7th edition. where you're wanting to go first and just blow people off the table. I feel like a lot of the guard armies that you could be playing could do a lot better.
That since 4th edition, but
yeah. Like Rob, you remember your guard army with all the Bulgrins?
Yeah, baby.
That'd do a lot better in second turn, right?
Yeah. Well, I think
playing that, which is fine. But I would also be very cautious about this win rate data, specifically because when I'm looking at the win rates by faction by themselves, if I were to take this like wholesale, I would have to believe that Slaanesh, Harlequins, and Demons are the top 3 books, and Death Watch and Astra Militarum are down at the bottom end. I think Slaanesh are good, but I think Slaanesh are often cheesing people, and people can't quite familiar with how to deal with Slaanesh. I also don't think that Chaos Knights, for example, are the 7th strongest book in the game. I think they're nowhere near that, because they have a 55.1% win ratio right now. Admittedly, over 118 games, which I still think is a small sample size. Also, back on the other end, Necrons. They have a 1,355 sample size, but they have a 45.6% win rate, which makes them one of the worst books in the game by this data. And I think that's completely off. And that is post-Codex, by the way.
No, that's pre-Codex.
They said it was post-Codex earlier, didn't they?
That win rate was post-Codex? I think that must include. If they got 1,500 games, that's got to be.
Oh, right. Okay. So it's both. There we are. We're both.
It's both. Yeah, it's mixed.
Yeah.
Necrons. So that probably means Necrons have actually come up a bit because the pre-Codex they were.
I feel like a lot of those games are down to post-Codex though, because otherwise they don't even being played 1,355 times. Because that's the 3rd most played book in the game.
I think the sample size argument is super valid. Although, again, I think from a directional point of view, there's lots that you can derive from this. And I think all I was trying to get to with things like, I think there's something to be said with the fact that Tau and Astra Militarum right now are both, the bottom 2. Tau actually has a losing record, both going first and second. But they win 19% more going first than they do second. Astra Militarum wins almost 60% of the time going first. But only 29% of the time going second. So like that tells you A, they're either building poorly, they're building to try and blow people up, or B, that's all those armies can do.
I think you're bang on. I think they're building incorrectly, and Tau, I think that's all they can do.
Because Tau are at the end of the day, they just shoot, right? One of the things that I'm a little bit obsessed about is I'll take like a combat unit that can punch into the center and take an objective rather than build a shoot unit that can shoot it off. Like, I'd rather go for a less efficient combat than a more efficient shoot unit, really. But the point I wanted to make, I think that you said, Tom, which was great, is if you look at some of those armies that are doing really well, like Slaanesh, Space Wolves, Chaos Demons, generally, Custodes, Harlequins, really, those are armies that are already built, they're not very complex model lines. There isn't lots of units like Harlequins. If you have Harlequins, you have all of the Harlequins, right? So, to rebuild a Harlequin army to play 9th, it probably was very similar to your 8th army. Yeah, Slaanesh the same. If you had a bunch of Keepers of Secrets and Epitome and some Seekers or whatever it might be, yeah, you already had them, so playing them again in 9th, you're not redesigning it, whereas the Guard one, as an example, yeah, maybe you have to redesign it from the ground up, buy some new models, paint some new things. Yeah. So it's very there'll be a construction lag for bringing some of those stats back into line. However, really cool. Is there anything else in the article that you guys loved?
Apparently, I have to read this article.
Who said that?
We don't know why he's here.
I know why he's here because he's brilliant.
Handsome.
Yeah, gorgeous.
If only we could see it rather than just
my hands. Just my hands.
Okay, hand fetish. I'm down.
And also, Tom, I find the Slaanesh one is probably a little premature, but and they also just don't have a lot of sub-faction data. But I think there's probably not a lot that can be said that Chaos Demons aren't particularly good at playing 9th edition. Yeah. They do have they have the tools, and they seem to be getting built well to do those things.
One thing
because for them, there's glaringly obvious picks oh, wait a minute, I could just bring a bunch of Nerdlings. Yeah, or there's just stuff that just automatically people gravitate to that win.
Yeah, and also everyone has a lot of change. I have one. I don't know why. I just have it.
Sure.
But also on the sample size thing, by the way, I don't think it's just the sample size that caused the issue. I think it's the amount of time we've had as well. Because at the end of the day, all of these games are just individual. It's not like one guy playing 1,300 games. Mm-hmm. It's lots of individuals playing a few games, right? you can't expect them to fully understand. Like we're still so like new into the edition, not just because it's been out for like a couple of months, but also because obviously the COVID stuff that I related to earlier.
Yes.
And I feel like it's not just about the amount of data you have; it's about how long that data has been continuing for, and seeing if that changes as people play more of the game.
Well, so the overall win first advantage in this has been very stable. It's been sitting at 58% in every month that they've calculated the data. So again, the aggregate, like the big numbers, I think that stuff, I think is all very much slam dunk. Like there is a very big first turn advantage.
Right now,
it's the why when you're untangling it and looking at all the specific examples. Yeah, there's going to be sample size problems there for sure.
Yeah. And I'll happily go on record and say I think this will peter out a little bit as we get more books and as we get more time to play this game. I think we might have a Death Watch win rate problem though. I think that might be a thing.
I have yet to look at that because obviously I've only been rereading the custom Stompa rules over and over.
Save yourself, mate. Don't.
Can I just let you all know that the Squigoth did a bit better? Squigoth's a little bit better. Not great, but a bit better, and I'll take that.
No, Mini Squig or Big Squig?
Baby Squig.
Yeah, Baby Squig's better than the Big Squig right now, I think.
Yeah. Which has the owner of a Baby Squig, like who I have named JVP. He is. I'm very, very excited about putting him on the tabletop in loads of different ways.
So before we go, I want to make one quick shout out. By the way,
we're not going yet.
I know, but I want to make this now. I want to make a quick shout out to the Death Watch win rate, which is currently 42%, and I want to see how much that changes after the book drops. Yeah, buddy. I still think that much are okay. We've only got 150 games though. But also when that book drops, holy moly, man. Holy moly.
You got some love for that book, have you? Okay.
No, I hate it. It's too good.
Oh, okay. Well, so the thing that I like the most, and I was saying to this Tom before Dayton and Val came on the call, was that what I love is that probably this is one of the most like ignoring data size. Yeah, right. And this is like one of like I talk about moments in wargaming in the past couple of years that for me really indicate a shift in a global understanding between all of us, and I think it's really important. I think about when you and Pete did that guide from the LVO about the top 100 players and what their win rate was. So you were really explaining that skill had a big impact on win rate, irregardless of army. I thought that was fascinating and valuable, and it showed that you can develop skill in the game and push that forward. I thought that was incredibly valuable work and really useful. I think back to win rates for Iron Hands, and then like that information existing so that Games Workshop had to actually do something. Like they had to come out with an immediate issue. They had to like immediately deal with this. I remember me and LLV pushing super hard for Snesh fixes over 6 months when they were riding at like a nearly 80% win rate. It took 40k to like 4 days, and it took Age of Sigmar 6 months. It's a bit of a lag on that one.
But even when Age of Sigmar did it, they'd completely like bodied Slanesh, whereas 40k were a little bit more. I feel like I like the way 40k did it a little bit better, just because they were very much. We don't want to over nerf it. We want to just keep incrementally.
Unless you're a GSE player.
Unless you're a GSE player, but they weren't even nerfing you because you were too strong. They just hate you.
Yeah, but they didn't body Slanesh. They changed them a little bit, and everyone just because before they were just like anyway, it doesn't matter. They didn't body them. I promise. Anyone who's telling you that's a nerd and wrong.
We're all nerds, right?
But my point is, that I'm trying to get at is what I love about this article and lots of the stuff that's happening at the minute is we're getting really healthy conversations about data and how we're playing, because this is only going to increase the skill level of the community when it comes to play. Because I was trying to explain earlier in the week this game to someone, like on a date. Right, and I was basically like, yeah, it was with a goblin. It's very confusing. No, but what I was effectively saying I was like, you have two armies, and really maybe one army is just better than the other one, so it just beats the other person. What's amazing is when you get to that level when both players have got that skill parity, yeah, and then the other person is trying to make the other person lose. I still think that is like when you get to that level and you get to that process, and I think this stuff only helps that work, and I can't applaud Goonhammer enough for creating that information, and Val, you guys doing the stats, and Dayton, I can't applaud you enough for making sure everyone's confident enough to appreciate themselves. Dayton, that's what you bring. You're the heart.
Thank you. I like to pick up a party more than a heart, but yes.
I was going to say over on 40kstats.com, which is curated entirely by Peter the Falcon, not this guy. I have nothing to do with it. I'm this hype man. I have a megaphone and I'm using that by yelling into another microphone. That's how I like to get the word out about the stats, and I like to talk about them sometimes. Regardless, we have a little stat called T-Whip, which before all of this ITC battles app data and the BCP down under pairings, like round by round data, was kind of like the best indication we could get of player skill. And when you look at that, looking till just before the Space Marine book dropped, like literally that week, all the data that Pete had assembled before then, there's about 74 players that in GT or major competition had gone 4-0 or better. So that's our sample size. So we would say that those are probably players of some degree of skill. And when you look at that, at the top three, you got Salamanders, Harlequins, Demons. And it's so it definitely does correlate to some of the stuff that we're seeing the guys at Goonhammer talking about. The thing that they also don't have is they don't break out their Space Marine factions. So Space Marines actually look middling on there, but they also have the most massive sample size. And maybe that gets to what Tom is talking about, which is the bigger that sample you get, the more the more the disparity maybe will come down.
Yeah. One of the other things on there as well, Death Guardian in here off joint third with Cult Mechanicus on the T-Whip. They've got a losing win rate in this article, I believe.
Yes, and they actually, I think overall, if I can have a look and see.
Over 1,200 games.
Yeah, Forge World did nothing to help them out.
Actually, they did do nothing to help them out.
Yeah,
they took away their Terex drill. They took away their drop pod.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Speaking of drills,
on the
go on.
So I was going to say they're just slightly above 50% win rate in Pete's data. So they have a average win percent of about 51%.
That's a 4-point difference, though. 3.4% specifically difference. How is that data so different?
This is just GTs and majors.
Oh, so yeah. And so we're taking basically like a 3.4% difference based on just casual games with the fucking app.
Casual games, and also the Goonhammer guys will also use BCP they mine data from RTTs, which is also a very different thing. So but Pete is always, I think for good reason, focused on major and GT stats, and that's because you know that player base is coming probably for the most part to try and actually win their games.
Yeah,
and also you can't accidentally have an unrepresentative. That's also why we pick 4-0, is because I think like the 3-0 mark, like anyone any list can go 3-0 in an RTT and never play a list that can beat them. Whereas once you get to that 4-0 level, you've probably played at least one round against someone who's tuned to beat you. So
and you can also club seals. Like you can have a bunny run, like even in a 5-game tournament. Like, but
it's the thing. So it depends entirely upon the size of the tournament, then.
Yeah, agreed. I for interesting play-by-play information about tournaments and factions and how they perform against each other in a more you basically need players. Minutia, thank you so much. You do need players who are all of a competent skill level going forward. Comparison to chess and stuff like that.
And that, Sorry, I keep talking, but I'm so excited.
Go on. It's a podcast. Go on. I like excited. Excited's good.
I just like what you said there. One other big thing about COVID-19 is, although we are seeing GTs, although we're seeing majors, you're not seeing people crossing. So you're not seeing like metas interacting with one another because people aren't traveling very far. So whereas before you'd have, in the United States, UK as well, you'd have, and you're everywhere basically, you'd have a traveling contingent of players. So you'd know that if you're playing in anything, like any major anyway, it would attract people from outside of that region who came to play. And so you would always have a filter. You would have to beat, even if you were the local hero, you'd have to beat someone from out of town to take it. Which is why, for example, our biggest event, the Capital City Bloodbath, hasn't been won by a Canadian in a couple of years.
Well, big shout out to
Yankees keep coming up and beating us.
A big shout out to Australia this year, CanCon. largest Age of Sigmar event to date in the world, 240 people. The Kiwis took it home with them.
Really?
They just strolled out. They
And they also did that in rugby yesterday too.
Oh wow!
Oh snap!
Oh snap! So
while we're on that as well, it's not that we're just not seeing metas crossing. We're only seeing these events in certain countries. So in the UK, we're having none of them. We're having no events.
We're going to get back to that too everywhere.
Yeah.
By the way.
And also not forgetting, Tom famously thinks that the UK has a 6-month lead on the NA nubs.
No, that was specific. That was a specific example of flying Hive Tyrants, and I was bang on. You literally had other people.
I'll call it for you, Tom.
Saying,
Don't worry.
I don't know why Hive Tyrants are so popular. They seem shit right before they took out Adepticon.
All right, I'll call it then. I'll just say that.
All right, fine.
And obviously Val's natural NA bias. Although I'm joking, of course.
40K Stat Center has done more to promote a global meta, I think, than any other show that exists. Peter's website has done the same.
I don't think Val's heard of a WTC Squadcast. That's very rude.
That's a little Eurocentric, every last one of them.
That's okay. We're trying to get Americans on, but unfortunately, they don't meet our standard of play.
Wow. All right, so there's some questions come in the chat, and I would like to take them if that's okay. First one goes to Dayton. Dayton, question for you.
Jesus.
Yeah. The question has come up for you. It's, do you feel, as a volunteer firefighter, that the fire having a first turn advantage is an issue?
The fire always has a first turn advantage. That's why it becomes a fire.
And how do you feel about that? Do you not just, preemptively just douse areas with water?
There's a reason why we're called first responders. We respond. We are only responding to the situation. We're not actually being.
What's your win rate against the fire?
In our area, really good actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, second turn advantage. That needs nerfing.
That does need nerfing.
Well, it's always tough because we roll off to see what trucks we get on. I don't know if you knows this, but we all show up.
It's like the whole demon rules in 5th edition. Do you get a preferred truck or not?
Boarding Man Charles says that water is OP and please buff fire. I've seen those things where you like the condensed powder balls or something. You just throw them into the fire and it just puts it out. They're pretty awesome.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of handy. You know what else works really well? A fire extinguisher.
Okay, so make sure
Why
yours
don't we
are
just
in date
get-
at home.
Why don't we just get a bunch of drones that can drop
Oh, yeah,
those bombs?
just drone
and,
strike it.
Yeah.
Well,
The
what they
American
actually have done with drones
drone
is
strike.
running shock pads,
What's the shock pad?
like defibrillators, electronic defibrillators.
Whoa.
What they run those in drones. So when you make an emergency call, they've been tested in like New York and stuff. So you make a call. Basically, when you have a heart attack, you got 8 minutes to be brought back without having any permanent damages. So the chances of paramedics getting to the scene within 8 minutes is actually really low. So now they're attaching these drones with shock pads on them. So they'll land on the scene much faster, and then they can just vocally communicate to them how to work them. So they've been testing those quite a bit to great success.
I love when real life Deus Ex Machina actually happens. Like there's a story of Harrison Ford like rescuing someone from the desert in his helicopter, like his like antique Bell X-1 helicopter or whatever it is. And I just love the image of like me like on the ground, like, oh, I'm gonna die, and then like Indiana Jones has his hand out for me. And I also really enjoy like I'm having a heart attack, oh god, I'm gonna die, and then a drone just comes and drops the machine that I need to save my own life. That's just fantastic.
Wow, the chances of you being able to do it to yourself are really slim.
Not according to Hollywood.
You need a bystander.
Hollywood really does know everything. Is the key factor here.
Seriously though, PSA, those defib machines, especially if you have like older family members and stuff, like you can actually buy them for a reasonable price and have them around your house, and they will walk you through how to do that.
Very simple to use.
Yeah, so
and they would have helped Rob
You
out.
say reasonable price, it's like 800.
Would they have helped me out?
Yeah, that's exactly what they use to get your heart back on.
They also gave me the Michael Jackson drugs, though.
The Michael Jackson drugs that he gave people, or that they gave Michael Jackson?
No, Michael Jackson famously, his doctor was overprescribing a particular drug that puts you to sleep for a little while, but it gives you horny dreams.
Ooh.
I know, and the doctor told me, and he was like, "You're about to have horny dreams," and I was like, "About to
Sign me
start."
up.
I've been sat next to Pete Colissimo for 2 days. I've had nothing but horny dreams.
He's got a pretty sexy name.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I said it right.
I know, but he's got the curtain, so all you hear is Colissimo.
There's actually an O. I misspell his name every time I type it, but there's actually an O in there. It's Colosimo.
Oh, that's less sexy.
Oh no, Snooker?
Colosimo is actually kind of hot. Actually, it depends.
I've been telling the snooker story a lot, and every Canadian I've told it to is like, well, how do they say it?
Hey Val, did you dress your kid up?
He was the spooky skeleton.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we have a photo of
my
him on
2-year-old picked up door to door real quick.
What's door to door? Oh, trick or treating?
Yeah, he
we
had his
banned,
big sister to lead him, and yeah, it was pretty good.
we banned that in the UK. We're currently on an anti-children eating bent. Like, this is kind of our new thing at the moment. We're just not really up for kids eating.
To be fair, touching all the doorbells is probably a bad idea.
Yeah, doorbells. Where's doorbells?
Posh people like me.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
No, you just if you wanted to knock on, you just knock on the laminate that's kind of pretended to be my door, and
rattle the letterbox.
Well, you got to get past all the guys playing mahjong to get to my place anyway, so it doesn't really work.
I would ask you how the barbecue duck is, but unfortunately, you wouldn't partake in it.
I think they pretend sometimes they're vegetables and try to feed me them, but it's a different convo. All right, anything else left to say about the stats? Like, the other thing I'd like to just talk about, which I think is good. Val, you touched on it, that it was the win percentage go first based on missions, which I thought was interesting. Again, fairly low data sets, but still real cool. And the fact that it's just been so comprehensively looked at. I tried to make this point earlier. The fact that this information is coming out, and I guess what other information would you like to see, in this kind of level of granularity in the future,
I want to see what happens when we have, the tournament scene back and rolling, and we have people using, scoring apps at tournaments, and we're getting, instead of 1,000, we're getting 10,000. We're getting 20,000. I counted up Pete's, total games logged. I hope I don't misquote it, but it was 88,500 games or results, 44,000 individual games he's actually personally logged, over 20,000 lists he has looked at and counted and checked to see what the major faction was, all that stuff. So if you have now an app that's doing that work essentially without him having to go through and vet it, if you have TOs who are more into properly submitting lists in a reasonable format, man, we're going to find out so much about this game. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. I and that's an exciting time, I think. And unfortunately, COVID's going to really hit the. Also, I find it fascinating that anyone's perturbed by this information at all, because as much as maybe you've got, it's given us direction, maybe it's not perfect. Not that I think it's pretty great, and I'm really data driven. So this points me in a direction, and I'll go with it until it's just jump off point, right? I'm not just going to naysay it and be like, no. I'm going to be cool, this is a starting point, and I'll see where it takes me. Go on, Val.
Well, I was just going to say there's a I guess economic concept known as Taylorism, and in Taylorism, it's essentially this idea. It comes from the advent of line work, and like what Henry Ford was doing, where you put one part on, it goes to the next guy. You put the same part on, it goes to the next guy. That kind of stuff. And in Taylorism, the idea was you measure every single element of a task, and so that tightening this nut takes 4 seconds. And you basically can aggregate all of the things that you have to do to build your car, and you know exactly what you need each guy to do, and you know exactly how fast he needs to do it, all that kind of stuff. And so the second you start getting measurables, you have I find you have this, there's this compulsion that humans have to try and control those variables and measure every single little thing. And suddenly, if you don't have enough knowledge of exactly how much time it takes to screw that nut, then you can't make a choice, which I think is kind of bullshit. There's so many decisions that are made in life, in games, and all that kind of stuff, which you're going to have to make. You basically take what you know and what you can see, and you have to make your best guess. And I think that's essentially what we'll have is we'll be able to guess better. But ultimately, as Tom keeps pointing out, we're just going to be guessing.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. which is why maybe this is why I kind of like maybe thinking maybe go the other way. Like, allow Goonhammer to do these like in interesting articles that are in depth and detailed. Val, like Stat Center, 40K Stat Center, like produce all the great stats it does, and then just go raw hot takes, just like absolutely no foundational information. Just pure guesswork. Tom, you got any?
I've got loads, but every time I say them, like the chat bullies me, so they're not getting any more hot takes in. Even if they're right most of the time, they just don't bully me.
You got any
hot take? Hot take is a 4-1 Stompa list right now.
When
I think
that
that's
line
2-4.
assembly started there, Val, if you couldn't keep up to production, you got removed and replaced with someone else. Usually it's someone younger.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, next TTS event, I'll run a Stompa, and then we'll see if you can go 4-1.
Hell yeah. It's what you do with
Val,
that other
to go on that too, on the Ford vehicle assembly line, it was Toyota that came over and actually taught the Americans how to do it proficiently. That was the deal that Toyota made with Ford, was to show them how to run their assembly line and not lose production.
That would be much later in time. That'd be in the 70s or 80s.
But like Ford runs it on just like a linear line, whereas Toyota ran it like a tree. So when you completed a component, it would slide into the line. But what would happen is if something was wrong with the end production, with Ford, they had to shut down the whole line to isolate it.
Yep.
Whereas Toyota could just shut down one of their branches and still keep the assembly line going. So it was much more efficient. So that's what Toyota gave Ford to be able to get their plant in North America.
Well, you know what Ford gave Toyota is an escape from feudalism and and the concept of industrial production.
Wow.
I feel like that's a very positive way of spinning what exactly they gave.
That's like when people go, Alexander the Great, what a great dude for bringing like philosophy and Hellenic thought to the rest of the world.
Just so you don't get it. Just so we don't get it twisted here, Commodore Perry.
Alexander the Great went.
Let's have a little history lesson with Uncle Val. Commodore Perry rolls up into Japan in approximately 1860 something, and fires his cannons off 3 or 4 times in Tokyo Bay. Up until that point, Japan had a policy of killing anyone who washed up on their shore and was completely shut off to the rest of the world. The demonstration of strength and clearly overwhelming military might to the Japanese by Commodore Perry suggested to them, if we don't get our shit together real fast, we're screwed. And fast forward 60 years, you have one of the most powerful industrial nations on the planet. It's one of the most remarkable turnarounds. This is before, of course, we dropped nuclear bombs on them. And the Japanese were really
weren't even that country. Up. What country are you in?
Japan.
No, what country are you in? We drop bombs.
Oh, no, like
all
the Allies.
North Americans are the same.
Yeah, the Allies. You guys drop bombs too. You
not
also
big ones.
You also firebombed the shit out of Germany. It was all the same strategy.
Dresden wasn't a thing.
The Supreme Allied Commander in Europe was an American, so I hate to point that out to you. Anywho,
we did have one for Operation Market Garden, which was bloody terrible. But apart from that,
but he's a classic First World War English general. He's like, oh, just send all the lads in, and hopefully, maybe they won't die.
What I'm saying is that the Japanese were one of the most remarkable industrialization stories of all times, and yes, they did learn about industrial production from Henry Ford and the assembly line. Thank you. I am Val Heffelfinger. No, I'm not.
Appreciate you bringing us. I mean, there's a lot of information there, and
now we have anime.
And Pokey John in the chat Pokey John in the chat has pointed out that obviously Japan didn't take advantage of their first turn advantage either.
Yeah, their alpha strike wasn't good.
This is my TED talk. Oh dear. I don't know how to close the show off, to be honest.
Shout out to Gozzy. Thanks,
Dayton,
Gozzy.
Please. We can't end there. We got to circle something in first. It's like a bad taste you got to wash out with some soap. Dayton, you got anything?
Yeah, watch What Happens in America on Tuesday. And
oh God.
It'll be Wednesday for me. Yeah.
Hug all your friends, hang out with your friends, because we're all shutting down real quick.
Oh yeah. Are Are you guys shutting down in Canada?
Yeah, you were just talking with Budtastic last night. Their province is going to code red as of Monday because their numbers have blown up more than any other province in a very
Quebec?
short time. No, Manitoba.
Manitoba?
Big Red.
That's a brilliant name.
Yeah, they're not doing well.
Well, capital of Manitoba is Regina,
Oh,
the city that rhymes with fun.
Is it Dildo in Saskatchewan?
Dildo's in Newfoundland.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Aren't they all near? Where's that Sword and Steel lady from? Dear God, what an angel.
British Columbia somewhere, I think. No, she's from Newfoundland. No, she was from Newfoundland.
Yeah,
she's from there. She's from there. All right. Well, yeah, we are now in a national lockdown of 4 weeks. So if anyone has enjoyed the stream, I've worked out now that we're closer to the year mark than we are from the start. So
that's what the half-year mark was, Rob.
Listen, I know. It's just taking me a while to catch on. I'm a late bloomer.
You're good, mate.
So hopefully, we've only got to get to March now, which looks very realistic because it looks like we're closing now for a month at least. They're going to open up for Christmas and they're going to shut us down January, February time as well. That takes us into March. Stream Street, baby, is hitting a year. That's
here for a year.
That was not the intention, but here we are.
That's not the intention. I was like, there'll be 6 weeks.
You don't know what you got yourself in for.
Oh, I'm scared for 2, if I'm honest. Scared for 2.
Nah.
Dayton, can I ask what you're painting up, baby?
Yeah, I got Mollog going up for the Underworlds. It's part of a Secret Santa that my team is doing where you got to keep the price under $50 for a model and you paint it up and you send it to your Secret Santa.
That's cute as hell.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
I think you'll very much appreciate it, and I've been putting a lot of effort into it. And my teacher was asking what my focus was drawn on during classes, and that was it. So...
I made my best conversion to date so far, a tree lord. Val, I'm not sure if you know the size of a tree lord, but it's a tree man kind of shape. Goes on an oval base that's like an exalted flamer size.
I saw it. I just don't understand it. Like, what is it? Like, what will you use it for?
A tree lord, ancient, which is. But I've got it. I've mounted him on a scenic base of a Dreadsaurian, so that's going to work out really nicely, I think, because the Dreadsaurian's quite bad. So is
the tree man.
So is the tree man. So I thought
if
if I put them all on one base, maybe it'll.
Here comes Chris, by the way.
Oh yeah, big can we just Twitch chat? The stream has survived the entire show, so can we just all thank? Can we also thank Chris in the chat for doing that, for putting all of his loads in
big
my.
Load. That's one big load.
Loads of big loads. All right, let's end the show. It's been a pleasure to Val, Tom, and Dayton. Thank you so much. Look after each other and love yourselves as much as you can.
We've definitely been doing a lot of that. Thanks for updating it. Yeah.
Engine manufacturers often classify their engines according to the displacement. As previously mentioned, common units of measurements are cubic inches, cubic centimeters, or liters.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks to everyone on the podcast and everyone on Patreon. You guys got any shout outs before we go? Val?
Shout out Commodore Perry. And also, none of what I said should be construed as an endorsement of Imperial Japan or any of the horrible shit that they did.
Yep.
Or Imperial America. Tom?
Shout out to Gozzy. Thanks, Gozzy.
Big love. Dayton?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Thanks for bringing me on a podcast bringing me on a stream streak about hobbying. Hopefully I brought some hobbies to some people and wasn't completely run off the tracks by a topic that I was not prepared for.
And that's why you start your own podcast.
Yeah. Coming on as a guest is the worst. Right, everyone look after yourselves. Go listen to Party at All Points if you want some more of that. And we'll see you guys soon. Have a nice day.
And 40K Stat Center.
Oh, yeah, and also WTC Squadcast.